Kia ora mai tātou, a kahua te tau, kahua te rā, te marama oihina, a ka tau nei te moana whakauru pū, whakauru pē, te whare pā, kauru tōpito kia tū, kia rongo, kia mārama, mārama. Whai hoi ho te heke tuauri, te mata pūtahi ngā paki tū, ngā paki ora, ki ngā wai puapua, kia mahi a ki te ora, o hine, o tama, ka tūku, tūku, a hōhiri ki te puna wai ora ata nei tokoraki, toi tū, toi ora, whakaoti nuku, whakaoti rangi, whakaora kia mau, ka mau, whano, whano, tū mai te ora, haumi e, hui e, tāiki e. A kia ora mai tātou, a tēnā koutou katoa, a ka tikara me takina taku mihi tuatahi ki tō tātanei ātua, a nāna i hana, a nāna i tano, a nāna hoki nā mea katoa. A ka huri te kei o taku waka kia rātou kua whetūrangi tia, a haere, haere, a whakangaro atu rā. A ka huri ki te ora, ki te hunga ora, a tukaha, a tūmaia, o a tūmana wanui. A anei te mihi kia tātou katoa. A ka huri ki te kaupapa te rā, a ko tēnei huihuinga, ko tēnei wānanga-nanga, a e pāna ki tō mātou nei tā iau. A tēnā nau mai, a haere mai, a ki tēnei huihuinga a ipurangi, a he pai ki te kite a koutou kanohi, a hakoa a kei tawhiti ke, a kei mamao ke, a ko te mea nui kei konei tātou, a po te tai au, a koena te mea nui. A kia koutou, o kia tātou katoa, a ngā iwi take, a o te moana nui a kiwa, o te moana tā poko a tāwhaki, a e koutou o te whenua moi a. A tēnei au e mihi atu ana kia koutou. A kia kaha, kia māia, a kia mana wanui. A ki te moana nui a kiwa, a koutou, a kei ngā mautere, a kei ngā motu, o te moana nui a kiwa nei aku mihi ki a koutou e aku tuakana, a aku mātua, a aku whai, a aku kui, a aku kraua, e aku pakeke tēnei au, a e mihi atu ana ki a koutou. E tātou, te iwi Māori, anei aku mihi ki a koutou, e koutou, a kei te hiku o te ika Māori, a kei te hokianga, kei te taitokero, a e koutou katoa nei aku mihi ki a koutou. A ko te mea nui, a ko te aroha, a koena te taura i here ai i a tātou katoa. A tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
Kia ora tātou, talofa lava, and welcome to this year's launch of the Caritas State of the Environment for Oceania report, online yet again. So Te Pō's opened proceedings with a karakia of healing and restoration, and acknowledging the three major areas of the Pacific, Australia, Pacific and Aotearoa. He also acknowledged the importance for Indigenous peoples to remain strong and resilient against the challenges brought on by colonization and the effects of climate change. Tālofa, my name is Tim Bass, and I've been honored to serve as a Pacific advisor to the report series, and today I'm here as your MC. So welcome to you all. Welcome to some of our familiar friends and friends from Rome. So the Caritas Oceania Environment Report Series is a collaborative project sharing stories from the grassroots and coastal edges of Oceania. The reports detail how environmental issues are impacting people and show how they are responding. We aim to amplify the voices of Oceania peoples on caring for our common home. Caritas Oceania brings together Catholic social justice and development agencies across the Pacific, working for authentic human development on behalf of the bishops of the region. and part of the international Caritas network of 165 Catholic agencies around the world. Our report has always been more than words on paper. This year, thanks to technology, we're bringing it to you live. Last week, we were fortunate to have an online talanoa of nearly 80 people, and we will share some of those stories. So my job today is to keep everything on track, or to try my best, tell people when their time is up, and keep moving things along. So just a few acknowledgements to Marita, Matthew, and Kate, who will be working in the Zoom back room, making sure everything goes smoothly. Also in this season of creation, we also acknowledge the Laudato Si movement for the Zoom platform and publicity assistance. So now we're just going to look at our program for today. Thanks, and I'll hand it over to Jules to give us a brief outline of our program.
The program you see in front of you go through in the next hour. We have a number of people who will be telling the stories from Talanoa. We will be sharing the indicators and recommendations, and the final part will be the Oceania statement that will be read by Matthew and Marita on behalf of the region of Caritas Oceania, on behalf of our members. Ina mana ina reo tēnā koutou katoa, mai haere mai, ko Julian Hiki aho. I'm the director of Caritas Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome today to our online gathering on this feast day of St. Francis. Since 2014, we've been gathering to share the voices and stories from around the region as we listen to and understand the environment. We've heard about the impact on food, water, wild weather, rising sea levels. We've understood the impact of mining, the concerns, including seabed mining, and year on year, we've told about the lack of climate finance for the poor in our region. Our reports and statements have always been released on this day of St. Francis, and today I'm delighted that we will be gathering and hearing the statement that arises from the Talanoa that we held and builds on all that work. So over to Martin.
Kia ora tātou. No harike ho ina ene e noho ana ho ki te ao karangi, ko Martin de Jong toko ingoa. I'm really pleased to be here to share online once again, as we did last year, the environment report. This year it's all online. There's no written report as such. We are producing a short statement. Some of the wording still to be fine-tweaked, but we will release that when it's all finalised, and we'll share some of it today. We've also got the stories behind our analysis is online too. Some of the stories and video are already there, and more will be added to support. This year's work has also been done with the upcoming United Nations conferences on climate change and biodiversity in mind. State of the Environment for Oceania reports have always sought to listen and amplify Pacific and Oceania voices, to listen particularly to the voices of the poorest and most marginalised, suffering loss and damage in our region, but also to listen to the Earth herself. As Pope Francis put in his letter on ecology, our goal is not to amass information or satisfy curiosity, but rather to become painfully aware of what is happening to our common home, and what we need to do about it. I'd also like to acknowledge the different languages of our region, especially the first languages. We're conversing in English because it's language of convenience here, but we're very much aware it's not the first language that's here, and those languages often express their relationship with nature. We've also sought to undertake this research in a Pacific way, ever growing and ever adapting to the wide geographical locations and different cultures, languages and technology. I'd now like to ask Amalia Ma'afu, who has been with us on this journey since 2014, environmental research. Amalia Ma'afu, formerly from Tonga, but based in Auckland. Would you tell us about Talanoa and how we applied it?
Malo Pito Martin. In the Pacific, to Talanoa means to hold a conversation in an inclusive and receptive space. It has been recognized as a traditional method of solving differences in Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa contexts. Throughout the COP22, the Talanoa dialogue sought to break the climate deadlock by drawing participants closer together through sharing their stories of climate change. Fofola e Whalakai Talanoa e Kainga is a Tongan conceptual framework. It means to roll out the mats so the family can dialogue. It is an invitation to family members or a community to come together to Talanoa, to talk. The whala or the mat signifies family, grounding, or a safe space. The fe'unu or strands that are weaved to make the mat represent respect, humility, forging of good and respectful relationships, and the passion for ensuring completion. The underlying meaning then is an invitation to come together, to be seated on the mat, to talanoa and arrive at an agreed solution. It is a safe space without hierarchy or order, where people should not feel fear nor intimidation. Yes, even our children have something to contribute. We agree on the future together. As former director of Caritas Tonga, it gives me the privilege to share with you from our online talanoa the opening address from His Eminence Cardinal Soane Mafi, President of Caritas Oceania, followed by the current director, Suliana Whalemaka.
Malo lelei, kia orana, pulaminaka, talawhalawa, bonjour, Maori, halo, ola keta, akalofalahi atu, and very good afternoon to you all. I'm so happy that so many of you have responded positively to the invitation proposed by Caritas Oceania, as led by Caritas Aotearoa New Zealand, and hosted this online talanoa. May I extend a special welcome to those of you who would be leading our talanoa, who would be leading us in this discussion this afternoon with their input stories and experiences in the different areas where the impact of the environmental issues were and still are truly felt from the grassroots and coastal frontiers of our Oceania region. I'm confident and very hopeful that your expertise and wisdom, as well as your own personal participation in the suffering and pain, those loved ones whose voices were the cries of the voiceless, that we as family of Oceania Caritas are being commissioned by love or Caritas itself to re-echo their cries and to amplify the sounds of their struggles so that the proper attention and actions be given them. Thus, the significance of the so-called report of the collected stories of this afternoon would certainly be our very best contribution in our common mission in imagining the rightful future of our natural home that we all need. I wish you all well in our talanoa this afternoon. Malo apito.
Malo elele from the Kingdom of Tonga. My name is Maria Suriana Faimaka, National Director for Caritas Tonga. Climate change is impacting our lands, coast, water supplies, and weather patterns. In Tonga, we have longer and more frequent droughts. In one of our island groups, especially at risk is our Hapai Island group. People in low-lying coastal areas are seeing stronger storm, surge, and flood events, while salt water is contaminating groundwater and affecting drinking supplies. It also changing the very nature of its chemistry. Ocean warming is affecting our coral reefs and fish supply, particularly in low-lying coastal areas. Increased sea levels and storm surge during tropical cyclones permit the intrusion of salt water, hence contaminating the groundwater and affecting the quality and quantity of potable fresh water for drinking and other purposes. The sea level trend in Tonga suggests a general increase in sea level of 6.4 millimeters per year from 1993, when record keeping began. In Tongatapu, Caritas Tonga responded to this with the distribution of plastic rainwater collection tanks and established communal water refill stations across 21 low-lying coastal communities at communal locations, including school halls, community halls, and church halls. The impact of severe tropical cyclones causes significant devastation, widespread loss of infrastructure, including damage to ports, crippled industries in fisheries and agricultural crops, and significant internal displacement for affected communities are only the imminent impacts, not foreseeing long-term rehabilitation, which often flows onto next intense natural impacts, as was the case of DC Kita and DC Herald.
Malo Opito, that was Suliana Falemaka speaking at last week's Talanoa. We now move to Samoa, where we have Karen Anaya and Christina Mareko to share a story about flooding impacts in Momofo. Talofa, Karen and Christina.
Thank you, team. Talofa lava. Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Anaya, speaking to you today from beautiful Samoa. Flooding is one of the many environmental issues that we face here. Climate finance has come in to build infrastructure for one of the most destructive streams affecting over 37,000 people. The stream is called the Vaisingana River. This has been a 6-year project funded mainly by the Green Climate Fund that is just now starting to provide protection with walls along parts of the riverbank and better drainage in downstream areas. Unfortunately, many people are still vulnerable to other streams across the country, and the need for additional climate finance is urgent. Our hope is that resources and technical knowledge, coupled with traditional knowledge and input from communities, will lead to better adaptation measures and protection for those most vulnerable. Here's Tupa's story from the village of Momofo.
Exultai Salo o whātou wai nei I le tausanga te li o na pamatia mātou ai nei le vai tafi. Ia te rewhia wa ai le meni tu. Wa whaita o na fuafua se ngā ruenga fwoi o na ua te rei whaare tono o mātou whanua. Wa awhia au tafa whan, ia ua poroka o na au rui. Ia ua sau fo ina vai tono o mātou whare ne. Ua reanga uma ngā whae tono o mātou whare ua sau ina vai tono o te ne. Ia o reo mwa ia whae ngā ia mātou aina. Ia tanga ia tu lewa o reanga mātou whare. Ia awhia ni turo fo ia le septic o mātou. Tā mātou moe ia ono se I Moksinoa are vai wa uma ia ono pato atu ta pena mai ne. A rea fianga o roa tina I le mene. E o le le misa o moe le po atoa. E le mwhaina o moe wae e pei a se mea fo le I go ulia mawhawha pia ra o taimi uma taimi ma rawa tupu ane mea o le a o mai a whak rawe e ao le e sa o moe mau. Ia e o fo ila whanau. E le o le fo I a o lia whawha I atu le whainga o le mea lo tali ngaru le whaatino e maa roko o aile au whainga vena.
Climate change severely affects those who are oftentimes left outside the climate finance conversation. Climate impacts are here, now, and they are felt most acutely by local communities already disproportionately vulnerable to economic, health, and other stressors. Yet, we lack information on how much climate adaptation finance is actually reaching and supporting these at-risk communities. The need for climate finance is urgent. Communities like Moamoafo are in dire need of infrastructure and adaptation measures. But true long-lasting resilience will only come if frontline communities have a seat and a voice at the decision-making table.
Talofa lava. I'm Christina Mareko, and I'm from Momofo. And I have to say that our community has been living in fear of the river that overflows through our village. From what you saw in the video we just watched, we noticed that the December 2020 flooding has gotten worse since the last 8 years. 4 of the families who live by the riverbank has lost some of their Samoan houses and open homes that were built at the edge of their lands, all due to the strong current that overflows the riverbank. During the heavy rainfall and flooding, people had to evacuate to higher grounds, and as a result of the strong current, some families left with half of their lands as the water washed away part of their lands and homes. There is now work done due to the place, with bulldozers fixing the river by laying rocks as a result to build some sort of wall. There is no clear communication whether it's the government or a company that is working on fixing these walls. The families fear that we are now at the cyclone season. The weather is still unpredictable. And with the work nowhere near complete, our community still lives with fear that it will get worse and worse. Thank you.
Lava, Karen and Christina. Shifting ground again, we travel to the other side of the South Pacific, to Papua New Guinea, with John Momori of Caritas Kavieng and Jonathan Masulan from the Alliance of Solwara Warriors brought us up to speed on the continuing battle against seabed mining. It's a significant current issue with recent New Zealand Supreme Court rejecting an appeal relating to an application to mine iron sands of South Taranaki, and the International Seabed Authority under pressure to finalise international rules for mining the seafloor by July 2023. But in Papua New Guinea, they have been battling it for more than 10 years. We now have a video by John and Jonathan from Papua New Guinea.
My name is Jonathan Masulam, and colleague John Momori, Caritas Liaison Coordinator of KVM. We're both here to present on the issue of seabed mining. Now, seabed mining is another additional burden to the already existing pressure that the people in the Pacific, the low-lying island communities, PNG, are facing. Now, the potential impact or implication of seabed mining in PNG and the Pacific is one, there is no environmental reports or things that say that seabed mining is good for us. Until now, the environmental concern is very, very great. No one knows the potential impact of seabed mining. And that is very, very scary for us. You know, the planet that we are living in or on has two lungs. One is blue and the other one is green. We have the blue is the ocean, and the green is the forest, the trees that we have. Once we destroy these lungs of the earth, where else are we going to go?
John and Jonathan from Papua New Guinea. We also heard at the Talanoa a first Australian perspective on Indigenous carbon farming, and that video will be available on the Caritas website. Last week's Talanoa also concluded with some short and succinct words from Mina Pumaripeta, principal of Te Kura Taumata o Panguru. She spoke to us from the Hokianga in the far north of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And she had lessons learned from connecting rangatahi, young people with land and culture.
Ai, tēnā tāta katoa. Mihi ana kia koutou katoa mai tēnei tōpito o Aotearoa kia koutou ngā koutou e noho ana I ngā mautere o tō tātou nei ao, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Ko hau ko Mina Pumaripeta, ai tika he uria hau no te raroa no he kaiako he tumuaki a hau hoki. Well, I've been given the word from the co-host that I've got to be very short. So you'll watch the video. We have three things. There are three words I want you to remember. Kaitiakitanga, which is what we have all been talking about, which is important that if we look after our land, it will look after us. And two, youth are part of the solution. They are part of the solution, and their views and their perspective is part of the solution. And three, time. Colonizers have been telling us how to do things according to their time. And now as Indigenous people, we need to take back and understand what time looks like for us. How do we observe the seasons? How do we observe the land? How do we observe our ocean and our sky? And from there, how do we create solutions? Because we have to deprogram all our young people so that we can move forward. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora, that was Mina Pumaripeta from Te Kura Taumata o Panguru. And you can see a copy of the video for last week's Talanoa on the Caritas YouTube channel. So we're now going to move to Martin de Jong to talk about the Caritas environmental indicators.
Kia ora, Tim. And I'd like to note that Mina is live on this this session too. I'm glad to have you again here, Mina, and good to share your video again. For those who weren't part of last Tuesday, I was the co-host who was telling Minna to try and keep it short. I didn't like doing that. I still haven't learnt my lessons about time, especially working natural time. But, and we've got the Caritas indicators are a key part of the environment report. It's our assessment. It's based partly on science, but more particularly based on the stories. No, sorry, just had a sign saying unmute myself, but I am unmuted. So just checking everyone can hear me. Yep, the indicators. Thank you, Marita, for the slides there. They've been a feature of the Caritas reports, usually a snapshot assessment of how severe or not different indicators are. You'll note they've all moved to severe for this year, while climate finance has remained woefully inadequate since we started these in 2015. But I'd like to invite Finau Levini, our programs manager from Caritas Aotearoa, to speak particularly about the first four there, why we've rated them severe for this year. Finau.
Malo apito Martin here, ma'ofanga malia and malo elele, and good evening to everyone. Our assessment as Caritas Aotearoa New Zealand was really a culmination of a couple of factors. The first is, of course, the incredible Indigenous wisdom, knowledges and experiences of our partners, some of whom we heard from earlier this evening, who are working and dealing with these issues on a daily basis. So as we could see for our partners and the communities that they live and work in, extreme weather, coastal erosion and sea level rise, food and water supply, offshore mining and drilling, and climate finance, these aren't just indicators, they're actually very real, very tangible and extremely challenging reflection of their daily reality. And so their collective voices and experiences and that richness, of course, went into the assessment and the grading, if you like. The other factor that we looked at was really the state of the global political environment with regards to climate change. More than ever, we could see that Pacific voices are being amplified on global stages. We're championing issues on climate change. We're at the big conference of the parties, the COP meetings. We're at the UN meetings. These meetings are coming to the Pacific, and we've had global leaders visiting the Pacific. Our pleas and our cries for strong climate action have been broadcast to the world year after year, statement after statement, report after report. Yet the lack of corresponding global action in response to that is woefully inadequate. The water is literally lapping at our feet, and we're sharing these stories, but the response from those who can actually make a huge impact is still one of indifference and largely inaction. And I guess this reflects that we find this not only acceptable, but also incredibly heartbreaking as a region, and this has to change. The indicators reflect that we are currently in a global climate crisis. The great news, though, is that although the IPCC report issued in August revealed that things look pretty dire if we don't make some drastic actions, what it also highlighted is that we still have the opportunity to get it right and to turn things around for the environment and for our climate. And this is the defining decade. And as people of Oceania, as people of faith, we hold fast to that hope and will continue to amplify the voices of Oceania. Malo apito.
Malo apito, that was Finau Levini, Programs Manager for Caritas Aotearoa New Zealand. So here to highlight some of the key recommendations arising from the report is Julianne Hickey, Director Caritas Aotearoa New Zealand. Title for Jules.
Hello for Tim. And a key feature of our reports over the last 7 or 8 years has been the call and the call to us as individuals, the call to us as families, as whānau, as both local and national governments, and regional and international, that indeed we can all do something. It is important that we don't feel hopeless or lost, but that there is an ability to do something about this. And again, as part of this launch today, we call again at some of these recommendations, and part of the call are things you've heard before, and some of them are new. And they will be part of what we ourselves take to heart. Key that we know is that we need to listen to the young people, to our elders, to Indigenous and the local people who know their place well, and to ensure that these voices are heard and heeded in problem solving, decision implementation. We need to listen to the earth and what is going on. We also want to call again to keep alive the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement. We need to cut carbon emissions now and quickly to minimize the impact of sea level rise and more extreme weather that we heard of in last week's Talanoa and that we've heard for many years. It is vital for the survival of Oceania and the world. We need to support urgent coastal adaptation and relocation, adequately financed by government, but made sure that local communities can partner with that. We need to recognize and prioritize and provide for the basic human right to healthy food and safe drinking water. And we also need to strengthen knowledge sharing across the region to learn from each other and to find common solutions, for example, on resilience building and early warning systems. We need to strengthen the ability of communities to provide local disaster response. And we need to develop climate response projects based on sound science, ground-based Indigenous and local knowledge, and with the full participation and involvement of the affected communities. And finally, we again call for the banning of seabed mining. We have said this before and we say it again. Our ocean is at risk, Moana Nui a Kiwa, and the last thing that we need is for our seabed to be mined for minerals that we don't think we need. You heard John and Jonathan from Papua New Guinea, but across the Pacific, we hear that call and cry time and time again. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Jules. So arising from our report and analysis and this year's Talanoa, we've developed the Oceania statement, which represents our message to the world. And I'd like to invite Matthew and Maretta to share that statement now.
Thank you, Tim. I'd like now to read the Oceania statement towards our future home. A cry from the earth and from the poor of Oceania. Over recent decades, Caritas in Oceania has listened to the joys and hopes, the griefs and anxieties of Pacific peoples on environmental loss and damage to our common home, particularly to the voice of the poor. We've been both saddened and blessed by their sharings. In the last decade, we've amplified their stories through the Caritas State of the Environment for Oceania report series. Even before our current crisis, many were living a long, ongoing emergency and unknown future. COVID has exacerbated our concerns and diverted resources and energy away from longer-term existential threats of inequality, poverty, and environmental degradation.
Last week, we gathered as members, partners, associates, and friends in an online Talanoa to hear the hardship, hope, and resilience of people facing the intertwined crises of our day. Woven together by bonds of kinship, by the waves and the currents of Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, our great Pacific Ocean, and by the air currents that circulate above her waters. Brought together on the 28th of September by the electrical currents of cyberspace, yet woven together by love and compassion for each other and for the least in our midst.
Our ongoing Talanoa comes from the whala, the ground level of the Pacific, from high mountains and deep rainforests, from gardens and fields, from the coastal edges, from far out to sea, and from the ocean depths. We speak as kaitiaki, gardens and stewards of the earth and children of the one God, creator of all.
We are people of faith and hope. We have faith in a loving and protecting Creator. We have faith in people of goodwill, in the natural and adaptive resilience of our people in their struggle to provide for their families, to protect their homes, to nurture the gifts of the earth intended for all, including future generations.
We are the ocean, and the ocean is us. We have lived and thrived here throughout generations from before time. If we look after our Mother Earth, our common home, she will look after us. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita and Matthew. And thank you to all our participants for tuning in. So you can find out more information on the report and any of the stories that were shared today online on the Caritas website or the Facebook group, the Oceanian, and we'll pop those details in the chat so you can find those links. Great way to keep up with ongoing news on the report and different opportunities to participate in relation to COP26. So we've now reached the Q&A session of our program, so you're welcome to ask any questions you may have about any of the stories or the analysis that was presented in today's Talanoa. If you could raise your hand so we could see you. Change. Is that Paul Donahue? Oh, no questions. So everyone's just stunned. Great report. Yeah. I have to squint between two screens. Sorry. Paul Shannon.
Yes,
Kia ora, Paul.
Kia ora, Tim. Thank you. I appreciate this is really a question probably for Julianne, really. I realised last year after the initial lockdown, we were concerned greatly about the funding for Caritas to continue its work. And I appreciate there was some concern there. How are we placed now? Has there been any change, or is it still in a dire situation?
Kia ora. I hope you're well in the Waikato. We as continue doing the work. One of the things we learned from the series from the network and advocacy
I think we just lost Jules. I think she was having issues with her internet connection. We'll wait for her to reconnect, Paul, and then we'll get a full answer to you. Thank you. Siobhan Dilly. Kia ora, Siobhan.
Kia ora, hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm Siobhan Dilly. I'm the Executive Officer for the New Zealand Catholic Bishops' Conference, and I'm very grateful to be able to watch this presentation and see the work of Caritas Aotearoa New Zealand and the partners around Oceania. I had a question. I think Martin might be able to answer it. I've been really impressed to see the map that you created and things like that. And I'm wondering, as the reports that come out of this work, when you feed it into the UN advocacy work with the upcoming UN conferences and so forth?
Sorry, Siobhan, do you mean are these reports shared directly with the UN, or are they?
That's right, yeah.
Primarily through the Caritas network and other Catholic agencies at this stage, and there are some regional bodies that we send the reports directly to. Because it's online this year, we haven't necessarily developed all the ways that we will get the message out. And the report is a basis for ourselves as well. That we use material from the reports to inform submissions and other material. But we have had a better connection with Caritas Internationalis in their preparations for COP26. We had a good meeting with them last week as to what their plans are for COP26. And there are actually quite a few other networks that we're part of, SIDSE, Catholic Development Alliance, and Laudato Si movement. I know in seabed mining, we're part of the Deep Sea Mining Pacific group, and we've got quite a few international connections there. I know on that seabed issue, yeah, but we managed to get a meeting with Cardinal Turks and a recent IUCN meeting on seabed mining with people from the international seabed lobby. So it's, yeah, the networks are there, but they can always be developed, especially direct access to the United Nations. That's probably enough for me for now, because more questions.
Thank you, Siobhan and Martin. Kevin. Kia ora, Kevin.
Kia ora. Kevin Smith, I'm on the board of Caritas. Just a congratulations to Caritas Samoa, really, for getting hold of some environment financing, or what the term was, that has been of some use. It's been one of those conversations on the Caritas board as to how we in the Pacific can get better access to financing for climate change issues. So almost just a, kia kaha, well done for that. And maybe outside of this session, some lessons there for others to learn about how to access that along the way. But I guess you always need more as well, by the sounds of the stories that we've got here tonight.
Kia ora, Kevin. Thank you. I can see Jules is back. How's our connection on that end?
Yeah, I'm not sure where I dropped off, but just to say that quite often whilst we might operate on the smell of an oily rag across the region, we're trying to get rid of the oil, and we continue to be inspired by the Indigenous wisdom and people and voices, and finding ways through. So thanks, Paul, for the question. I also saw in the chat that there is a question about the analysis for the indicators. So I'm wondering perhaps if either Martin and Fino would want to talk more about that analysis and how we are moving it to severe, and that trajectory of what we're seeing. And in many ways, it's a prophetic indicator. And if we look over the last 10 years, we can see as well that the prophetic nature of seeing what is and what is happening and hearing those voices is what helps give the background to those indicators. So Martin and Fino, would you be able to comment on that?
Yeah, I'm willing to comment first. Fino, just lost the document I was referring to. It's partly based on the experience of this year, but also looking future forward, especially the next year. It differs with each issue. Coastal erosion is ongoing. You saw the stories in last week's talanoa from Kosi about erosion of a road, and we know that's a long-term problem, and it's just worsening, and very little adaptation for local people to deal with that. Regarding weather, there wasn't any big extreme super cyclone this year, but a number of smaller scale, heavy intensive rainfall outside the normal period. Australia and New Zealand saw that a lot. And more particularly, the COVID situation was a real source of concern from program staff, with food security being affected, including the supply lines and people maybe going back to the land, but not necessarily having the familiarity with the land or organic ways of farming. So that was a factor. So we were looking more to the future, but this time seabed mining in particular was pushed to severe because of this pressure on the ISA to finalise the rules for seabed mining. And even though the Supreme Court decision that we heard in New Zealand was a good decision, it's still technically something that sends it back to the Environmental Protection Authority. But even in New Zealand with that recent case, it's still uncertain as to what's going to happen with seabed mining. So the threat is still there and quite strong. And we want to send a strong signal. Fina, do you want to add anything more?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for the question. So the analysis, I guess, reflected a lot of the feedback from our partners and what they're seeing on the ground. And what we're seeing, and I guess it reflects also the length of time that we are seeing the very same problems, and they're not getting any better, and they're actually just getting worse. And you'll see in the indicators that almost all of them are severe, except for climate financing, which we put at extreme, because actually some of these issues are really could be addressed if there were the proper provincial, regional, national infrastructure in place, and actually access to climate financing would really greatly support that. But because there hasn't been much ability to access finance, and Kevin, it was a great question that we would be looking at to Samoa for some tips on. 20 years ago, when I joined the Tongan government, we were setting up a unit within the Ministry of Finance to support access to climate finance, and that's still a massive issue today. And it just shows, I guess today's reflection is just that compounded exacerbation of the fact that we're still seeing these problems, they're still being faced, and there hasn't been, I guess, much relief from these issues, which is why it's jumped up to severe. And I'd have to say across the board, resounding back from our partners that these issues are at that stage.
Maro Pito, thank you, Dina. Just seeing if we have any further questions. You could use the raise hand function on Zoom or wave frantically and we'll pick you up. Oh, Suzanne. You're on mute, Suzanne. You're still on mute.
Yeah, now you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all this information. I just think that it would be great if some of this information is actually present and represented at the COP26. Is it so that Caritas is in connection with other NGOs that are directly presenting these issues at the COP26? Yeah.
Suzanne, we're in contact, as I said, with Caritas Internationalis and SIDSA. Indeed, Amalia Ma'afu gave a input on Talanoa to what was called the Glasgow Dialogues prior to this COP26. It was a session set up by Glasgow civil society and Glasgow government. So that was input to COP26 before the event happens. We don't have direct, as in Caritas Oceania, Caritas Aotearoa input, at least not at the moment. I don't know whether Sawat may be able to provide perhaps with something, but it is through the Caritas Internationalis network. And these reports are shared widely with other organisations. But this year we don't have anyone from Caritas Oceania directly at COP26. We'll be looking to share the stories as much as we can.
Yeah, no, that's good. And sorry, I wasn't there for the Talanoa, but yeah, that sounds good.
And I've just noted Pedro Walpole from the Rowan Network is also interested in our stories, and I know that we have spoken to them as
well. Jules has her hand raised.
Thanks, Tim. I just wanted to finish off the bit that you probably missed when I dropped out earlier on in response to Paul's question. And it was about finance as well, about funding. And recently, Caritas Aotearoa New Zealand has signed a $10 million 5-year program with the New Zealand partnership program, with the New Zealand Aid program, where the New Zealand Aid program provides 7.5 million, and through our fundraising, we provide 2.5. and a significant part of that program of work will be about acknowledging that work needs to be done around resilience, disaster risk reduction, and a number of the issues that arise from climate impacts and environmental concerns that our partners share. And that's across 7 countries, of which 5 of those are in our Oceania region. So we're looking, certainly for us, it means that we can continue this work, but it also means that the concerns raised we will be able to address in programming and Tonga, Kiribati, Fiji. So we're looking forward to being able to, over the next 5 years, bringing more stories of hope and change. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jules. So I'm just going to do one last round of questions, just checking the screens. And if you're unable to ask a question tonight, you're more than welcome to email any of the staff members, and they will happily follow up with some answers. There's a question from Cecilia in the chat. Are states in the region moving towards enhanced legal protection for people displaced? Martin or Jules?
Thank you, Cecilia. Cecilia is from Caritas Internationalis, and we've been working with them on researching this issue. It is significant.
Hi to everybody.
Thank you, Cecilia. I think the short answer to your first question is no, as far as we can tell. But we are researching, as you know, and I think some of the other Caritas Oceania staff members probably know more about that issue than I do right now. It's not something that's been adequately addressed by anybody, and yeah, no, we ourselves are not bringing any cases to court right now. We're aware of the issue, and it is significant. It's one of the most damaged issues. But as you know, our reports have highlighted a number of things not being addressed, and we appreciate the help of yourselves and others in seeing what can be done. We'll continue the discussion, and thank you for raising it, because loss and damage is one of the really important issues at this coming COP.
Kia ora and thank you. So just on behalf of the Caritas Oceania and Aotearoa teams, we'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to all of you for participating in tonight's online Talanoa. And we would like to continue and encourage you to continue to stay engaged. And to, oh yeah, so there's some links there for people to continue the Talanoa online. And to close our session today, I'd like to invite you all to join me in reciting St. Francis's Canticle of the Creatures. Most High, all-powerful, good Lord, yours are the praises, the glory, and the honor, and all blessing. To you alone, Most High, do they belong, and no human is worthy to mention your name. Praised be you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, who is the day through whom you give us light, and he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor. and bears a likeness of you, Most High One. Praised be you, my Lord, through sister moon and the stars. In heaven you formed them clear and precious and beautiful. Praised be you, my Lord, through brother wind, and through the air, cloudy and serene, in every kind of weather, through whom you gave sustenance to your creatures. Praised be you, my Lord, through sister water, who is very useful and humble and precious and chaste. Praised be you, my Lord, through brother fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful and robust and strong. Praise be you, my Lord, through our sister, Mother Earth, who sustains and governs us, and who produces various fruit of colored flowers and herbs. Praise be you, my Lord, through those who give pardon for your love and bear infirmity and tribulation. Blessed are those who endure in peace, for by you, Most High, shall they be crowned. Praised be you, my Lord, through our sister bodily death, from whom no one living can escape. Woe to those who die in mortal sin. Blessed are those whom death will find in your most holy will, for the second death shall do them no harm. Praise and bless my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility. Amen.